finally are ready to put those for a vote in December. So we just want to talk a little bit about, we're going to be releasing them. And then at the next meeting, we're going to have a vote and we want to open it up for discussion to talk about those, the bylaws and the corporation, certificate of incorporation at that time. Sue?
Just a quick recap of where we were and where we're at. The current bylaws, as you know, we've talked about it lots of times before, needs to come into compliance with some changes that were made to the not-for-profit corporation law back in 2013. And so we're still working on that process. In January of 2015, the not-for-profit status committee was established to invest, and they were charged to investigate changes to the bylaws to bring us into compliance, to see what how the bylaws could be made more articulate so that it would guide the board in a more solid way going forward. And they were also charged with looking concurrent changes to the bylaws and the certificate of incorporation that was written in '63, I believe, was when it was approved. Anyway, and also to investigate 501c3 status. So that committee's been since changed. As you well know, this time last year, the board presented the members with revisions to the bylaws that had taken us almost a year to do. And as a result, we never actually did vote on those bylaws because the consensus that night was that we needed to go back to the table and look at them again and present a new version. So Fred Amato volunteered to chair that committee. Thank you very much for your service, Fred. And Joe Sirianni and Bill Brown served on that committee along with myself and Claire Stortini. So, fast forward now. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Throughout the course of the last almost 2 years, we consulted multiple times with our attorney to make sure we had things moving along in the right direction. So we had feedback from her, and the governance committee, the not-for-profit committee, became the governance committee. Worked very hard to make some changes, presented them to the board and to the attorney over the summertime, and the board made some decisions about that and got together with that committee again, and we hashed out some differences of opinions and some final issues, and we're ready to present them now to the members. So Jenny will be talking about that process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So they're over on the table over here. There's some handouts. If you don't have them yet, you can pick them up on your way out. There is a draft of the proposed bylaws, a draft of the certificate of incorporation, and a document that just outlines the summary of the changes that we made. As Sue mentioned, the bylaws haven't been changed since 2009, and the COI since 1963. So we do need to make some changes, both to be compliant with New York State regulations, not-for-profit law, in order to also make our operations smoother and more consistent, and also to meet the requirements of 501c3 that we've talked about. I'm not going to go through every change that we made. It's listed in the summary, and you can look at it in detail after the fact. I want to hit on a couple of main points. We added language that the lawyer recommended regarding requirements for not-for-profit corporations. Those things have to be done to keep us compliant. We modified our purposes. The purpose statement is probably the most important part of the bylaws, and the COI has a purpose statement as well. And we added things to reflect what we're currently doing. Things like the beautification work that we do, the security and safety committee wasn't in there at all. So we added things like that. We changed some language to be consistent with requirements of 501c3. But I think it's very important to make note that nothing we changed in the document at all changes the purposes of the association. So that will continue no matter what. There are a number of other requirements that are in there that are legalese, and you'll notice when you read it, it's, document, lawyer language. For this amendment to the certificate of incorporation, we took out the 23rd ward is no longer really relevant for our name, and we made the purposes consistent with the bylaws. So I think the most important thing to keep in mind for the changes, we need to make changes to the operating documents of the association. I think we've, back of the envelope, calculated that we spent well over 200 hours of time working on this. Certainly not me, because I just came into this, and I'd be going crazy if I had spent anywhere near the time that people have spent on this. I think everybody's done a great job. We need to move forward and, put this to a vote. So in December, we're going to bring forward the document and ask for your support in it. If you have questions, I don't think we have time tonight, but if we have questions, I think we're going to have people email through, what is the email? Do you know?
Information, Charlotte.
Yeah, the Charlotte Community Association email. And we can get back to you and try to explain if you have comments or concerns. But just know that a lot of people had input into this document. Nobody got everything they wanted in the document, but it will make the association more viable for the future, I think. So.
Are these, is this information online?
No, but it's going to be, and we're going to be mailing it to all of the members.
Okay. Thanks.
Everyone's going to get a special mailing. We're going to put it on the website, and if anybody needs to be emailed to them, we can get it to them.
Okay, thank you.
And the only other, go ahead, Bill.
Okay, I think there's two stories here, and we're only hearing one, unfortunately. Fred and I, and Fred, correct me, we were charged with one purpose, and that was to update the bylaws. We did that, we submitted them appropriately to the board. The board then took on as a charge a separate thing called making the bylaws consistent with making the corporation as a 501c3 organization. There's much more for people to understand about 501c3, and as such, it was my recommendations to the board that the 501c3 should be voted on as a separate issue after all of you and other members understand what it's all about. All right, it's not as simple, okay, or straightforward as you would like. There are obviously ways that it can be managed under a particular dollar amount that makes life a lot easier, but there are other implications which were not explained tonight and are not explained in any of the documentation provided tonight, although it is very complete. All right, I'm not sure how we should go forward, but my position is that we should have a separate discussion about 501c3 and decide on that first before you incorporate it into the bylaws, which was not the charge that we had.
That's not true, Bill.
Please, tell me what's not true, Sue.
The committee had a plan of work. That
Who did?
The not-for-profit committee that became the governance committee all
We never had 501c3.
We had conversations about 501c3.
Well, we had conversations, but that was not our charge.
It was part of the plan of work for that committee.
Do you have a problem with the fact that these people should know all the implications? Then none of that was covered.
We are going to be discussing that more.
But if we're going to vote on it the next time, we're going to discuss it
We're
afterward.
not voting on 501c3.
We were voting on the bylaws which are designed around 501c3,
No.
right?
No, they're not exactly.
They're
what
not
they allow-
exactly?
What they do is allow us to enter into that possibility in the future. If we don't have that in our bylaws, then that eliminates us from doing that. So what we did was we added it so we can look down the road to doing that. It's not the only reason why we changed the bylaws. The bylaws needed to be changed. But we did.
But that was a
but-
separate issue.
But it is, yes, and
It-
so
it should be-
therefore,
yeah.
in order to bring us into a, a new age, to make things, current, to make us relevant, we need the opportunity, the availability, the option to be a 501c3. Those bylaws that we are putting out there allows that. The former bylaws didn't.
Former bylaws didn't allow a lot of different things,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that was not our charge. I'm sorry. Fred, I don't know what your position is. That's my position on it. We were charged to upgrade the bylaws, not to implement a 501c3 from the back door. I think it should be
But
voted on
remember,
separately.
what is it that you have as a roadblock to be a 501c3? In the future, if that, to.
What is my
look into-
problem with it? I'm not sure you guys are prepared as a board to be able to handle the responsibilities of a 501c3. Because we lack resources, both personnel as a group, okay, and money as a group.
The requirements of 501c3, if our revenue stays under $50,000 a year, are one postcard report at the end of the year. It's negligible.
Which would be my job.
Right.
To complete that and
I
turn it in.
understand.
Now, the requirements that, the changes that are in the proposed bylaws that are there because of 501c3 are, one, that we agree not to campaign for a particular candidate over another or provide donations to campaigns, which, by the way, the governance committee recommended anyway. It requires,
The board recommended that change.
no, it was
We
in,
did not make that change, Liz, I'm sorry.
the other requirement is that nothing, that we cannot give benefit to a board member or a member of the organization unduly. We couldn't hire Tommy's band, for example, and pay him $10,000 because that's just not reasonable. So we wouldn't want to do that anyway. There's language saying that we won't spend more than 20% of our budget on lobbying. We don't spend any of our budget on lobbying as it is. The only other changes we made have to do with semantics, the way we describe our purposes, to make a connection between language in the IRS regulations and how that relates to our purposes. It doesn't change our purposes. It doesn't change the emphasis of our purposes. It just makes a connection so whatever bureaucrat is reviewing the application could see, oh, that's how that falls into that. There aren't any other changes in the document that change how we would operate in the future or how, from how we are operating now. We would be required to limit our activities to the purposes stated in our bylaws. New York State corporation law already requires that we limit our activities to what's in our bylaws. That's not new. So I think the idea, I think Bill is caught up in some definitions that the IRS calls charity, and they interpret charity as having a public purpose as opposed to a private purpose, not giving out money to the poor. But honestly, there's nothing in the document related to 501c3 that is in any way inconsistent with how we've been operating and how we want to operate in the future.
One other point, and I'll be done. There's a section where we as a committee had suggested that the number of board members should be based on a count whereby we could have, Fred, correct me on this, it was 2/3 of the members had to be from Shalat, and the remaining third could be from the general community. Now, Carl did an excellent commercial earlier. I'm so disappointed he's still not here about that fact that the Shalat area is the area for all of Monroe County, not for just the Shalat community. And as thus, we always thought, and our basis for that was that we should have more involved for a couple different reasons. One, that reason that the Shalat community is part of Monroe County and should be recognized as such. Therefore, we should have representation from Monroe County that's beyond just one member. The second thing that we recognized was the fact that the board on a regular basis cannot fill all the seats, but they have more than enough work in regards to their responsibilities that they can't handle it all now based on their time commitments. Another reason to have 2/3 and possibly inviting other people from outside the Shalat community. And my third one, and I'm not sure if Fred and I had talked about this or not, was that by opening up to a wider community, we might be able to invite in other expertise that would be very helpful to this board and this organization. And that's been changed to just one member from outside the Shalat community. So you should be aware of that too.
Yes, our approach to changing it from the 2/3 members to the one member from outside the district is because our boundaries set us in Charlotte, even though we are a jewel of the community. If we were to say just 2/3 and then those numbers change, what are the backup plans to that operation? Do we not take votes until we have another equal distribution? Because at the 2/3 it would be 6 members would be from Charlotte and 3 could be from outside. And so if we had 6 from Charlotte boundary area and some of those members left, then the 2/3 would be thrown off by that point. So we just broke it down instead of keeping up with a percentage. We wrote, and one member from the outside would be allowed to come and join the board, and the remainder would be from Charlotte.
Jonathan, I don't think voting had anything to do with the membership mix. Whoever you had on the board, you had on the board to vote. I don't think we implied at any point in time that you had to have a balance.
And we didn't see any of those parameters in there. We all,
Right, so that what you just mentioned wasn't an issue.
and it was left open vague as we saw it, because there were no parameters around that or describing it or breaking it down. So we decided to change that from the 2/3 to the one member from outside the Charlotte boundaries. Yeah.
Would it be possible to have one, as many as one or up to 1/3, that it left room if there were more people available to fill in there, to have a few more board members other than just one? Would that be possible?
We discussed,
I'm sorry.
we had a lengthy discussion about it, and we all settled on one for that.
And that was the board, when you talk about we in that case.
I think we've
Yes.
always wanted to have as many people on the board as we thought was necessary. even up to 15 at one point. I think we had written that years ago, that we were hoping.
You can have up to
15
11 now.
15 people on the board. It would be nice, but it hasn't happened. And I think that also, if we need people with further expertise outside the community, we probably could invite them to come, as opposed to being on the board and not living in the Charlotte area.
And they can serve on committees as well.
Yes, they can serve on committees, if there's no problem, they can, you know, as long, if they're a CCA member, there are a lot of CCA members that aren't in our Charlotte area, and they're certainly more than welcome to serve on committees. We just felt that we were more comfortable with having representation of the board, of the people of this area, by the people of this area.
As the one person left who was started out with this project 2 years ago, I can say that we have worked very hard. A lot of us, we've had a lot of disagreements. We've managed to come through all of them. This board has felt very good about what we are going to present to you to vote on. We hope that we can have your support. We need to move the organization forward. Bill, thank you for your comments. Everybody is entitled to their comments, and everybody will get a vote. So we hope we can have your support so that we can move forward. Thank you.
All right, I attended the Chief Simonelli's PCI meeting this past month, and it was mainly talking